Welcome to Hit the Brakes, where we dive into the top stories, market trends, and ins and outs of the supply chain. No matter if you're tuning in from the cab of your truck, behind your desk, or on your daily commute, we're glad you're here and we're ready to serve you. Let's get this show on the road.
Well, welcome everybody to Seminar 71 with ACT Research. I'm here with Brett Lankford with Fetch Freight, Director of Strategy and Innovation. We're here to talk about the takeaways from our recent seminar. We've been meeting with manufacturers, shippers, trucking companies, and all sorts of logistics providers over the past few days. We're happy to provide some takeaways. Why don't we start with the demand environment and the setup for peak season? I think that was one of the most interesting parts of the discussion yesterday. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think even with this trough that we've been in, and your team highlighted this and did a great job of calling this out, but the demand has been fairly resilient. Consumers in America have been fairly resilient. The demand has been there. And I think that what we're all questioning is, well, why is the freight market remaining stagnant and down in this trough? And I think the one big takeaway that I had was, some of the insights that your team brought that helped explain kind of what is holding down the market in the face of pretty decent demand. And this component of private fleet, which I think there's not a lot of great access to information on that front of what truly is happening there. And you guys do a great job of bringing that forward. But this rapid investment into private fleets and expanding these fleets, coming in and essentially taking volume out of the spot market, essentially reducing the demand that trucking companies and brokers and probably experience, is helping hold these rates down.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. We've been pounding the table on private fleet insourcing for probably about a year now, and it was really interesting to hear that from a number of players yesterday, including one of the biggest leasing companies who spoke and talked about that directly from the horse's mouth, if you will. Right.
I think the one other thing I want to call is just the cost structures that y'all highlighted, and the insights that Dean brought forward yesterday from DAT was, some of his research focused around the operating cost structures of owner-operators and compared it with the private fleets, as well as kind of the revenue expectations of the private fleets. And the math, to me, is really does not make sense. So what he called out was that I believe it's around $4 a mile is roughly the operating cost for a private fleet, compared to $1.80 for an owner-operator. And then also on the revenue side of what they seek to gain through backhauls in the spot market for a private fleet is roughly around $1 a mile. The calculus really is kind of perplexing in a way, and the decision-making that led to really this kind of large, significant expansion of capacity through the private fleets. And now the one other thing that I think everybody's been asking is, how is the trucking community still holding on? And Dean brought up a very good point, is that, we all know that there was a lot of money that was made and balance sheets expanded during COVID, when the rate per mile kind of skyrocketed and was kind of what was the most lucrative time ever in transportation. That a lot of these carriers were able to pay down their financing, which effectively reduced their cost per mile by 30 cents from $1.80 down to $1.50, which is allowing them to really kind of continue to hang on. And, it's generational losses right now. This is the other factor. So we're coming from this sort of first time ever that we have seen profits during COVID reach certain levels, all the way to now we're on the other side of the equation, where there is this kind of generational struggle. And a lot of these factors I feel like are coming together and really holding the market down. But the private fleets, just one last comment on that is, I personally believe that there is some trauma in the decision making. And I'm thinking back to my time. I was on the shipper side with a large food company during COVID when the market kind of took off, and we were on the bad side, the losing side of that. That I do think that there is some trauma from going through. I mean, when you have CEOs getting on their earnings call every quarter talking about freight costs, they don't want to have to go through that again. Now, this was a black swan event. I think we're seeing some things on the tail end of that are unprecedented, just like on the way up we're unprecedented. I don't think that should be too surprising, but some of the business decisions that are making, the capital expenditure and all that's involved, to expand these private fleets, I think that there's going to be some people that probably regret some of these decisions.
Absolutely. One of the things that we heard, just to add on to that just a little, is that the low used truck prices, which is part of one of the consequences of these private fleet decisions, is driving down used truck prices and making it easier for owner operators to get back in, which has perpetuated this overcapacity situation, and not exactly what we need. But like you said, it's coming from a place of a real stress. And we're seeing that stress playing out as they're trying to reduce that $4 per mile by taking even cheap backhauls. Those are short-term decisions, in my view, to correct those mistakes. The long-term decisions on correcting those mistakes will come back to truck orders. So that's a great segue into talking about truck orders. And we heard from a couple of major buyers and dealers and OEMs about the near-term outlook for truck orders. I think that's going to be, really key for the outlook for next year. We're right at the point right now here in August where prices are getting set for next year. Order books are about to open up. So we don't have really great data yet, but everything we're hearing from the industry is hesitance. And that's really constructive for the spot market for next year because it suggests that manufacturing has to ramp down a bit. We've been suggesting that needs to happen for a while now, and it hasn't. So what did you hear in terms of demand for equipment?
So the one thing that comes to mind is an anecdote, a conversation that I had with another attendee here that is is in sales with a dealership. And what he told me, which I thought was interesting, kind of thinking back to what was on the other side of the COVID environment, was that from truck order to that truck rolling off the production line, he's putting it at 6 weeks. So I'm thinking back to the stories that, we were being told, and they're real, but it was kind of a whole different, the side of the equation was, could not get trucks. Also during the semiconductor shortage, there were literally business decisions being made of, do you want power windows or do you want a crank window truck or do you want to wait however many more weeks? So it's interesting how quickly this narrative has changed and the situation, the circumstances have changed. But I just thought that was, 6 weeks seems very aggressive, but I think that just kind of points back to the point that we are in terms of supply and the conditions there that the manufacturers and dealers are dealing with. And it should come at no surprise that inventories are building and orders are slowing down, particularly given the unit economics we're seeing on the rate front. So none of this really comes at a surprise, but I do find it very interesting. Just it's a tale of two worlds, basically, of what we were dealing with just 2 years ago.
Yeah. No, trucks are definitely available now. But I think what this all puts us at is sort of a turning point with the truck manufacturers. And it's not a great sign because manufacturing's got to ramp down, but that's really key for the freight cycle. That's a really important thing. It's not great for our friends at suppliers and truck OEMs because they've been dealing with really strong demand these last couple of years, and they know that there's going to be demand in the pipeline heading into the 2027 emissions regulations. So they don't want to ramp down, but the market cycle's pulling it, and that's natural. And as we let that happen, I think we're very close to seeing build rates come down and supply start to contract a little bit. That's one of the most important things we need for freight rates to start going back up next year.
Yep. And I think it's a little bit of the bullwhip effect. It's working its way back to the dealers from the point of consumption for them and truck orders and hearing from these fleets and some of the decisions that they're making. That's pretty obvious that's what's underway. And and honestly, this is something that just has to happen. It's a part of the gravity of this market. We're a very cyclical industry. It ebbs and flows, and I think it's just been kind of astounding how long this has dragged out in this downturn. But I think everyone is kind of anxiously awaiting this, at least that's on the carrier and the provider side, to start getting some relief. Yeah. And then you're going to see this kind of go back through the cycle again and see that return of investment and expansion of fleets. And I think we'll probably talk about the decarbonization and electrification of fleets. And you mentioned EPA 27, but a lot of the battles on the emissions front, I think, are going to be coming right into the front and center of this conversation as we get towards the back end of this decade. So the next few years are going to be really interesting on when it comes to truck orders. I think it's not going to be the traditional conversation that we've had, because you've got all these other factors of, well, what kind of truck are you going to get?
Absolutely. Yeah. We heard a lot of interesting things on the zero emissions front as well. There's progress being made, but I would say, painfully slow. And it's the regulatory environment's a big can of worms to open up. I don't want to go too deep into there, but I will say, coming back to the cycle and where we are. It's been a long down cycle. I think everybody has experienced that in the for-hire market in particular. But one of our sort of conclusions is the laws of supply and demand have not been repealed, as our president, Kenny Beath, said earlier this morning, quoting Alan Greenspan. And I think even though we've been through a long downturn, that's still coiling a bit of a spring for an improved cycle in the future.
I mean, I think you're right on that. And again, we talked about the demand is holding up. So it really is just the supply rationalization. And while rates have bottomed, I think you called it out, was October was kind of the definitive bottom at this point, looking backwards with a couple quarters of data at this point. But the demand conditions are there. So I think as soon as we kind of work out the rest of this excess capacity, which I'm sure will probably happen over the next 3 quarters or so, that I think that we're going to get back into a very healthy environment. You're going to see trucking become a desirable place to try and earn a living.
So if people want to learn more about Fetch Freight, how do they reach you?
So, you can visit our website, fetchfreight.com. But we also have a number of, social media outlets. And I think one thing that people who have maybe not had experiences with Fetch, and those who do know us, have found very interesting is some of our outreach efforts and research opportunities. You joined us in Q4 of last year to present your forecast, and we invited carriers, shippers, prospects, research partners, all of that kind of nature into an environment like that. We have a podcast. Hopefully, we do have another one of those forecasts with you sometime in the near future. I think that was very well received, and it's always a pleasure just getting to talk shop with you a little bit. So. Appreciate your time, and thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. For more information, feel free to reach out to us at axresearch.net, or you can always give us a call at 812-379-2085. Thanks.